Hello and welcome back to Gateway Cinema. Unfortunately, Haroon can't make it for a bunch of recordings, so to give ourselves some breathing space, Matt and I are going to do an extra episode today. And a little bit off topic, I guess. Doesn't really have any parallels to the films we've done recently, except for, I guess,
Yeah, a
Halloween,
bit of a
given that we're doing
random
a John
one.
Carpenter film.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yes.
So we're going to be doing They Live by John Carpenter. The year,
Yeah.
I don't know. Can you tell me the year, Matt? I can't remember.
1988.
88. Oh, okay. So this is some
Hmm.
time after Halloween then.
Yeah. Well, yeah, 10 years.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I want to. In fact, I was going to leave this till the end of the episode, but we may as well talk about this now. Where do you think this fits in with his filmography? Because when I think of John Carpenter, I think of Halloween, The Thing. Uh, did he also do? Oh yeah, then Into the Mouth of Madness, Prince of Darkness, like that trilogy. But beyond
I haven't
those,
seen any of them.
I can't really think of any films that he's done. But where do you think this fits into
Uh,
his filmography? Well known?
yeah, I'd say so. I think it's one of the more well knowns. You missed Big Trouble in Little China and Escape from New
Oh, he did that
York.
one.
Yeah.
Ah.
And it's quite similar to though I haven't seen Escape from New York, but it's quite similar to Big Trouble in Little China. And I think it's kind of obvious that it was written for Kurt Russell.
Okay, I was going to say this because the protagonist looks like it took me like 2 or 3 seconds to realize no, this isn't Kurt Russell, but he looks
Yeah,
really, really similar to him. It's like a
I
more
googled it,
jacked
and
version.
apparently he was just like, "I'm not. I've just worked with him too many times recently. I might as well give someone else a chance." Makes sense. But yeah, this guy was a wrestler.
That would make sense given the body.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
didn't
and the
realize
fight
that it was.
scenes.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, yeah, of course. Yeah, I didn't realize
Yeah,
that it was the same guy when he had his shirt off the construction yard. And then when you realize the camera's sticking on this guy for 2 seconds, you realize, oh, right, no, he's not just like a chubby guy. He's actually got
yeah,
a lot of
yeah,
timber
massive
underneath.
fella.
Yeah, yeah. Um, okay, but besides They Live, have you seen any other films this week? Uh,
Oh, let me have a look. I'm always watching films. Let me just look at my letterbox. I mean, since I recorded last time with Harry, that was less than a week ago, I think. So some of
yeah.
them will be overlapping. Yeah, I've only watched one false move, which is a um I guess like a detective film, like a neo noir maybe sort. Nah, not really. It's sort of like a half Bonnie and Clyde like on the run movie and half a
Oh,
like
okay.
small town detective movie. But it was written by Billy Bob Thornton, who stars in it as well, and some other guy, and then directed by someone else. I can't remember any of their names. But it's a pretty interesting movie. I liked it quite a lot. You'd probably like it as
Okay.
well.
I like Billy Bob Thornton, so yeah, if he's in it, I'm definitely
Yeah,
giving it a
he's very good
try.
in it.
Did you
And I
watch
also
Love
watched
Lies
Memento.
Bleeding? Oh yeah, yeah, of course.
Yeah, I did watch Love Lies Bleeding. That was a couple of weeks ago now. You
Okay,
didn't
what do you
like
think
that
of
very
that?
much, did you?
I
Uh,
enjoyed it. I just thought that by the end it just unraveled, and well, no, I think throughout the entire film, I think the issue I had was that it was trying to be like a realistic film, like a gritty, realistic film, but then I felt like it was dipping its toe into fantasy a bit too much. And you'll know what I
yeah,
mean
that's
when I
sort of what
say
I
like the
liked
steroid
about it.
thing. So you quite
Yeah,
like that? Oh, okay.
yeah. I mean, it caught me off guard, and I was like, "Oh, damn, it's actually a bit crazy." And I like that they didn't really try explain what was real or not, because at the end, I won't spoil it, but um, there's a character who's we think stuff might be in their head, but then someone else interacts with them in this state, and so I'm like, oh, okay, that's just cool. I just like it being vague and me being like, oh, I guess that was real.
Oh, fair enough.
Uh,
Yeah, I
yeah,
it was just the ending, which I'm not going to reveal, but I think at that point I just thought, like, what the hell? But I did like it though. It was fun to watch.
yeah, definitely just
Uh,
a good ride.
yeah. All right, let's get into They Live then. So what do you think of this? Did you like it? Did you dislike it? Where does it fit in with Carpenter's other films in terms of
Uh,
like the ranking?
yeah, I liked it quite a lot. What are Carpenter movies? It's probably it might be the worst Carpenter movie I've seen, just because of how much I love the other ones.
Oh, fair enough.
Because I love Halloween. I love uh, Big Trouble in Little China was my favorite film for a while. That was like my go-to answer if someone asked me what my favorite film was.
It's funny you
And
say
The
that
Thing is
because
perfect.
one of my uni housemates, shout out Adam Gill if he's listening to this, he had like movie posters in his room, and one of them was Big Trouble in Little China, but I never actually watched it, even though he was clearly a fan of it.
Hmm.
But that's not a horror, right? Or is
No,
it?
it's like a martial arts sort of, but like sci-fi. Not sci-fi, like fantasy. It's very weird. It's like Mortal Kombat, but a movie
Okay,
starring Kurt Russell. It's really funny. I just remember it being so much fun. Like that's just what I loved so much about it. And there's like so many weird shots that stick in my head and like outfits and just crazy shit going on.
nice. So would you say that's still your favorite, or it used to be, but not so much anymore?
Uh, I haven't watched it since then. My I put it on with some of my friends at uni, but we ended up turning it off not too far in. I think you just get distracted sometimes, and so I don't know. I'd have to rewatch it. I might go The Thing. But again, on rewatches, I haven't loved that so much as my first watch. Not that I don't like it. It's just that first watch was so like visceral and
Mm.
encapsulating. It hasn't quite recaptured that on subsequent watches, but I still like it a lot. But yeah, it's between those two, um, and then probably Halloween and this. But I still think it's great.
Yeah, I think The
What about
Thing is
you?
still my favorite.
Hmm.
I I thought Halloween. I think Halloween was respectable, like we said in the episode, but I think because of how old it is, I just can't take it that seriously, which is
Hmm.
unfortunate because I wish I could, but it does seem to be a struggle that I do have. I've only seen it once, but it's definitely a few of the shots have stayed with me since, and that is in the Mouth of Madness. And I'm sure I read somewhere, or maybe like Joe, the one who, my mate who came on for the Halloween episode, I think he told me that
Hmm.
the Thing, Prince of Darkness, and In the Mouth of Madness, they make up a trilogy of films. And I think we watched
Okay.
all three of them at uni. And I wasn't a huge fan of Prince of Darkness, but I did like Into the Mouth of Madness. Not as much as the Thing, but I think it's definitely one worth watching. It's
Yeah,
got
I
the guy
haven't even
from
heard of
Jurassic
this.
Park in it.
Yeah. I'm looking
Yeah,
now. I've literally not heard of this. Or the other one. What was the other one? Something about
Prince of
darkness.
Darkness, I think is what it's called.
That rings more of a bell.
Yeah,
Okay, that was just before this one.
yeah.
Hmm. Um. But yeah, speaking of, I was watching some clips of John Carpenter talking about this film, and he said that he always preferred sci-fi to horror. So that sort of makes sense. Uh,
Oh
does it
wow.
make sense though? Because I sort of do associate
Not
him with horror
really.
more in my mind. But
Yeah.
the thing that that's a sci-fi as much as it is a horror. This is, um, I guess, Escape from New York is as well. Sort of. That's like a dystopian sort of thing. I don't know, but he's good at it. That's
Oh,
for sure.
actually, now that I think about it, maybe I have seen Escape from New York. Because that definitely does ring. Is Kurt Russell in that one as well?
Yeah, he's got like an eye patch.
Yeah, I think I have seen that one, but that was a
Hmm.
long time ago now. But yeah, I mean, I
Escape
the
from
first time
LA.
I watched is that actually a name of another one of his films? Okay.
Yeah.
Does he do like Escape from Chicago, or is it just
No, I
those
think it's
two?
just the two for now.
Uh,
They're both still
okay,
alive. Maybe
okay.
they'll get another one down.
Um, yeah, I think so. This is the second time I watched this film, and like to be honest with you, I can't remember anything from the first time I watched it. To be honest, but this time round, I would say it was a pretty fun watch. Like I think, as Carpenter films go, this was probably my third favorite out of five. Like
Hmm.
if we're thinking the trilogy, like with the Thing, Prince of Darkness, and Into the Mouth of Madness, and then what was it, Halloween and this? I'd say this is probably third out of all of them after the Thing and In the Mouth of Madness. Um, and yeah, like I didn't get any. At no point did I get the impression this was a horror, and I thought it would be a horror
No.
given John Carpenter's reputation. But no, it ended up being just this sort of fun, goofy sci-fi film. Uh, yeah, that maybe had a few laughs in it. I did want to say one thing though, and that was um, I watched this on Prime because shit. Sorry, hit the microphone. I watched this on Prime because I hadn't. Well, I'd already bought it previously, so I thought no point buying an extra copy. And I was actually quite surprised by how nice it looked. Like, I'm not sure if you found this as well,
Hmm.
but the shots where you have the nice like blue sky in the background, like during the day, I thought it had this really nice look to it. And I was quite surprised with that because that wasn't really something I associated with John Carpenter. Like for somebody having like a nice uh, sort of color palette. Whereas I thought in this one it actually looked really, really good, especially during the day.
Yeah, I see what you mean. I did think it looked nice as well. I wouldn't say his movies don't look nice though. Um, I guess nice is a word for it rather than like good. So I see what you mean. Like I don't know, just a lot of the city skyline shots. Yeah, I get what you mean. Because I guess you do sort of associate them with some sort of grimy. I mean, the thing. It's all snowy and dark and horrible, and
Mm.
eventually on fire. And Halloween, it's I don't know, same again, dark, and scary, and fucked. A lot of shadows. So I get what you mean. But I don't know, Big Trouble in Little China. I mean, I guess having seen that, it's very colourful and fun. It's very similar tonally. Like it's just like goofy action, um, cheesiness, but in a good way.
Mhm. Which films like is Big Trouble in Little China a little bit like Rush Hour? Would you say? Well, not really.
I've only seen Rush Hour once. I mean, it's less racist. um, uh, I don't know. I sort of get what you mean. It's like I'm trying to think of a better comparison though. It's just more like this, man. Like it's as 80s as it gets. Funny, goofy action and like stupid quips in between. The fucking bubblegum thing, and this is so funny. Like
Oh yeah,
that bubblegum
yeah. There
line.
were a
I've
few
heard it to
good
death.
lines. Yeah.
Yeah, I've heard that line to death, but just the delivery in this film is so bizarre. He's like,
Yeah.
I came here to chew bubblegum and kick ass. It's just like, oh, it's so fucking
And I'm all out
stupid.
of gum.
I didn't see him chew
Yeah.
bubblegum once as well. Where did you get that from?
No, it was good. It was good. Would you say a lot of films in the 80s were like this?
Uh, yeah, to an extent. I don't know. I can't. I'm really drawing a blank on like tonally similar films right now. But it's definitely the sort of stuff I associate with it.
Hmm. Okay. Um. So I think the big thing I wanted to discuss in this episode, and I think it sounds like you're down for it as well, is kind of a continuation of the Dark Knight discussion.
Hmm.
And so when I was editing that video recently, and I'll provide a link for anybody here in the video watching, just click there, wherever it is. Um, the one of the things that came up was I think you said that I lack knowledge of what goes into making a film. And I think the
Hmm.
implication there was that
Writing.
writing, yeah,
Yeah.
when people are writing a script, they have something to say about society. Is that correct, or is that an incorrect inference?
Uh, I think they just have something to say generally, or like it's just filled with ideas, and it doesn't even have to be like consciously Like it can just more so say something about the person who's writing it, but oftentimes, yeah, you are trying to insert some sort of ideology into it. Not so much society, because it doesn't have to be societal on a societal level. Like character studies can be more so about uh, just types of people or situations. So it doesn't. It's not always like commenting on a broader picture, but that's just what themes in movies are. And I would say, generally speaking, you're going to find them in every movie.
Oh, okay. I was just under the impression that what you meant was that they're always going to be trying to comment on something like political or social. Um,
No, I wouldn't say
but no, that
necessarily like it has to be. No, um, but I do think a lot of it is. I mean, I obviously talked a lot about fucking capitalism and shit in these episodes because I think it is really prevalent through a lot of these films, especially just because it's the society in which we live in. So inherently, a lot of these things would be touched upon.
yeah, I think there are definitely a lot of films that critique capitalism. Um, but I think one reason why I was a little bit skeptical about the idea that all films are political, which I realise now is not what you meant. But the reason why I was a bit skeptical about that idea was that I've noticed that there are plenty of other films that don't even comment on politics necessarily, but they'll just, like you said, they'll comment on something else. They might comment on something to do with ethics. They might comment on particular types of people. And obviously, this film is very clearly a critique of capitalism in the sense that the guy puts the glasses on, he immediately looks at the billboards, and rather than actually showing you an advert for a car, it says something like "obey," like sleep, and that kind of
Mm-hmm.
thing. But obviously, not every film does do this, and
And
yeah,
definitely
I was
not
just
so
wondering,
overtly. Like it's so on
yeah,
the nose.
yeah, like I think with this one, because I know that
Oh.
like Haroon in particular talks about how Nolan likes to keep hammering the point home again and again. But I think in this film, I don't think
Mm-hmm.
there are a few films that come to mind that surpass this film when it comes to how explicit they are about like what the film is about. Like when it gets to the point where they call the what do they are? When they call the aliens, oh yeah, they're called free enterprises. They go to different planets and do this like X, Y, Z. I think okay, like this is clearly really, really on the nose now.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but yeah, I thought this would be a good opportunity to actually talk about that kind of stuff because I think when it comes to films that have like political messages or something to say about stuff socially, the obvious one that comes to my mind is Parasite. I think
Yeah.
that's a pretty obvious one. But I'm trying to think
Mm-hmm.
about Nolan now, and I don't think it really comes up very often in Nolan's works. And Tarantino, like, yeah, I guess he touched on slavery in Django Unchained, but apart from that, I can't think of it coming up in any of his other works,
No,
unless you
I'd
can
say
think of it.
he no he doesn't do so much like societal commentary. Yeah, Django is that's probably the main and the Hateful Eight to a degree. And I
Oh,
want to say
true.
maybe Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, but that's not so much political as um, like you know, showbiz Hollywood commentary, and
Mm.
the transition between eras. But well, when I rewatched Pulp Fiction, there was a lot more in there, like philosophically, that I found interesting and like characterization wise. So I think for him, it's more like that. And yeah, with Nolan, I mean, we read that quote. It's probably going to keep coming up in every single episode now, where he basically said, "I don't do politics in my movies, and I think it's stupid. And if you do it, you're an idiot." Said something like that. I can't remember. Um,
I don't think he was that
have you?
harsh, but yeah, he definitely
Nah, I'm
doesn't like
joking.
doing it,
Yeah.
does he?
Well, but then it's in there though. But I think it's with him. He doesn't like to answer it so much. He just poses questions about this sort of stuff, but he never. And that's what he's saying in the quote. He doesn't want to tell you what to think about it, which is fair enough, I suppose. But I don't
Yeah,
think it invalidates like.
I just find with Nolan that I think not just when it comes to say his political views, but I think with a lot of things in his films, I do feel a bit confused by what he actually advocates for sometimes. Um,
Yeah.
like I think there's definitely a contradiction between the kind of message he has in Insomnia versus in The Dark Knight. Um, like on the issue of integrity, like the impression I get at the end of Insomnia is that he's talking about how it's really important that you don't like break your own rules because this is what happens to you if you end up doing it. Like I won't spoil it for anyone who hasn't seen it. But then with the Dark Knight, it's almost like he's saying that it's impossible to actually live by your rules. And yeah, I don't know. It sort of summarizes Nolan pretty well. I think that he's somebody who seems to be like pretty mixed on some issues. It's almost like he's quite indecisive, which
Yeah,
is
or just
interesting.
more
I think.
so uses his art and his writing to debate them, I suppose, rather than answer them. So
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, it's valid, and it is definitely interesting. But this film, yeah, I mean, it's sort of hitting you on the head. But I do have a note about this, and about the nature of capitalist movies, basically. Like, can you really make an anti-capitalist movie in the Hollywood system? And I guess the conclusion that I've sort of come to is they never have any solution, do they? Like they can pose all these, um, they can point out all these flaws and hold a mirror up to it, but there's never been like such a like a radical anti-capitalist movie. I don't think. Um,
And radical in what sense? Like, do they in the film they propose a new system?
yeah, I guess I don't know. I'm trying to think of any examples. I guess Fight Club comes close in terms of they blow up the banks or whatever and reset the debt or whatever the fuck they say in that movie. But fucking hell, sorry, I'm getting notifications in my headphones really loudly. It always throws me off when that shit happens. So
No
yeah,
worries.
I don't know. It's a bit of a what's the word? A catch-22, is that right? I don't know what the fuck that means. People say that. But
Yeah,
it's
I
like,
keep
can
hearing
you
people use that
really
term, but I never actually
yeah, I don't
know what
know.
it
It's
means.
a book, isn't it? I think it's a book.
Yeah,
So I don't
yeah,
know
it is a book.
where that comes in. But it sort of doesn't work. It's a bit of cognitive dissonance sort of meme going on with the whole because there is so many anti-capitalist movies, but can they truly be anti-capitalist when they're for profit and gatekept by a number of capitalists essentially? Because it would have to go past so many hands of the studio to like get approval for the script and then get a distribution. So I feel to a degree they're never going to truly be wanting to undo any sort of
I
part of
think
the
many
system.
people in who are high up in a studio, like they might be high up in a studio, they might get paid like a high salary, but I can imagine that a number of them would actually still give the green light to films that are like of an anti-capitalist bent, so to speak. Because I think like you might be on a high salary, but I don't think it would necessarily mean that it changes your ideals necessarily.
Sure, I mean, I guess it's the distinction between like the owner class and the workers, because I guess to a degree they're still workers. Um, I don't know, but this is where my knowledge on the subject falls short, because I wouldn't really be able to give a nuanced analysis of you know the upper middle class to upper class to owner class. I don't know. It's all a bit out of my expertise.
Well, I think with your point about films being anti-capitalist, I think it is possible to still have films that are yeah that have like an anti-capitalist message because while maybe there'll be some studio executives who wouldn't be too happy with uh a pro-capitalist film being made, I think actually wait a minute, let me just be clear that I know what you're talking about. When you say that it is it really possible to have an anti-capitalist film, are you saying is it possible to have one in the Hollywood system or just in a capitalist economy, like full stop?
I guess in a capitalist economy, yeah, I'm just talking about Hollywood mainly because it's very I, with like European cinema, it's different sort of funding structures. A lot of European cinema is funded by government grants and whatnot, and I don't know about the UK. I think it's more in the middle. I think we have a good like a good. It's not so profit driven, but I mean America. It's all about that. It's all about return on investment. You can't really. Yeah. I was listening to a podcast about Memento today, and how Nolan had made it. He'd made the film and he was shopping it around to all these studios, and no one wanted to touch it because they were like, "How are we going to make a profit with this?
Yeah.
It's backwards. Have you tried editing it forwards?" and shit like that. Um, so, and we know now that it's a classic and everyone loves it, and it's lasted 20 years. I don't know. I don't know if it turned a profit, but it's just the fact that that was rejected by so many companies, and they ended up the people who funded the movie ended up distributing it, and they'd never distributed a film before, just because no one would take a risk on this person who we now know is a multi-billion-dollar filmmaker.
So I think it's interesting you mentioned that because I thought one of the most interesting takeaways from an interview with Jonathan Nolan about that film was the fact that they take the film to different studios, and apparently the studio executives, or maybe not the executives, but the people who work in the studios who would have to give the film the green light, apparently they would tell Jonathan Nolan, "Oh yeah, I love the film. Like, I think it's great," and then Jonathan Nolan would say, "Right, great. How many of these do you want to buy or whatnot?" When it came to actually making a deal, and apparently the first thing they said was, what was it? Like, oh yeah, no, I understand it, but I don't think the audience would. And I think
Yeah,
this is something that I've noticed from quite a few. I think from quite a few writers or directors who work in, and I don't think it's necessarily like Hollywood per se, but I think they talk about it um, in terms of like studios in general, which is that they think that they tend to have quite a patronizing view of the audience, that many people in the audience, if you like, just won't get it, that kind of attitude. And I think Commode himself actually said once that one thing he liked about Nolan was that he was a director who actually had the confidence in his audience to actually understand his films rather than to be someone who could just be prodded around and say, "Oh, edit this way," so the audience actually understand it better. But that's what I thought was one of the more interesting things about the Memento story: the fact that there do seem to be plenty of people in the studio system who don't seem to have a very high regard for the audience's ability to actually understand stuff. Like, is that something that you've heard
mm-hmm.
before as well?
Yeah. I think it's because generally speaking, they want to appeal to the biggest audience. So they don't want a niche film. They want all films to be as broadly appealing as possible to make as much money as possible to satisfy their their shareholders as much as possible. And I just think, I just think it's an inherent flaw, and that's why I don't think any anti-capitalist movie can truly like have any sort of effect because it's all gate kept by the capitalists essentially. I don't know. I don't know if that's such a vague link. It sort of makes sense in my head.
But do you think that a film like, I mean, to be fair, I don't know how well Parasite did at the box
But
office,
that's not
but
American.
okay, so
I don't know
but that
enough
was
about that.
in
I know Korea is a capitalist society, like every fucking country is, but well, almost. But again, it's like different structures and how like films are funded. So I can't speak too much to that. But I think it did quite well. I mean, it's won loads of Oscars.
yeah. Like I think that because for me, I think when I look at the success of well, I say films like Parasite, and I can't actually think of many other films that are like Parasite. But like I personally can still see an anti-capitalist film doing well in a capitalist system, or like a majority capitalist system, if you want to call it a mixed economy. Um, but I think what I would say is that I definitely can't see an anti-communist film being made. Sorry, like an anti-socialist film being made in a socialist system, if you like, where there is like complete and utter control, unless of course you go outside the confines of the law.
Well,
But
it depends
then
what you consider
I'm
socialist, because I'd probably
it's in
argue
like
against.
USSR.
Yeah, they're just not though, are they? By like any definition.
as in the means of production owned by the state.
By the workers.
Well, see, there seems to be conflict on this issue because when I was looking into this, like people, there seems to be disagreement of whether workers and state, like whether that falls under the same definition. Because in the sense that the workers will own it, but then like by what means and by what representative?
Hmm. Yeah, I don't know. Again, I mean, I was talking to you about this. I'm not crazy educated on the USSR and all and the CCP and how it's been implemented in the past. My understanding, though, is that it's my understanding of Marx and what Marx wrote is a big critique of capitalism and suggesting that the workers should have ownership, and eventually this would lead to a stateless society that sort of runs itself and is not governed. So I don't understand how where the mass starvation and genocide and censorship comes into that. So I think fundamentally, all those that do that aren't doing what the creator of this ideology said. So I just don't buy them as that ideology. You can call
So
I don't know. You can call a spader whatever they call whatever the fucking thing is. I don't know. There's a saying about that.
Spado.
I can't remember. Don't
Oh,
worry.
a spade, a spade. Yeah, no,
Yeah,
I know the phrase you mean. No, so I think the reason why I think he gets critiqued for it is because, and again, I haven't read the Capitalist Manifesto. This is really mainly from like lectures
communist
I've listened to and like some, sorry, the Communist Manifesto.
and Das
Um,
Kapital.
and Das Kapital, yeah. Well, I did buy that, but never read a single word of it. It's fucking thick, like
Yeah,
that thick.
apparently I was watching videos on it today because I was trying to prepare, but I mean I'm just not built for this sort of fucking economic analysis. But apparently Das Kapital is just an analysis of capitalism and how it works to keep. It inherently needs the workers to be paid less than the value of their labor because it's profit incentivized. So
This is the labor theory of value, right?
yeah, so it's
Essentially.
not so Das Capital isn't about communism, from what I learned today. Whereas Communist Manifesto sort of is, but that's a pamphlet and is not like any sort of
Yeah,
detailed um, implementation of these laws. So I don't know. I just don't know what the fuck communism really is. I just know
I
that.
think
Sorry.
I from what I gather, I think communism is the end result that Marx wants from the Marx thinks people should strive for. So that
Hmm.
is like the stateless. There's a stateless economy, no money, no private property. You know, that's the kind of setup where he
From
wants to go
what's
to.
that phrase? What's the thing they say? From each
For
from
each
each
according to his
according to his
ability, to each according to his
yeah,
needs.
which I
Yeah.
guess
Um.
means yeah, you do the work that you can and you get the help that you need is what
You,
that seems like to me, and it just sounds
yeah. Yeah.
it sounds in theory like a utopia, and that should be what we're striving towards as a human race because it would mean that we're all
That's what
provided for.
Marx says we ought to do. And then, but he says as an intermediate, I think he says that you start off with, actually, maybe he even goes as far back as feudalism and says that following feudalism, you have capitalism. And he says that following socialism, and sorry, following capitalism, you'll then have socialism, which is when the state like has total control over everything, over all the music production and whatnot. And he says that there's the stage from socialism to communism. Uh, yeah, he says that there's that transition period from socialism to communism that leads to communism. And I think the reason why Marx is the one who gets the brunt of it from regimes like the USSR, Communist China, North Korea, Cuba, like whatnot, like all communist regimes or ones that call themselves communists, is because I think the reason why they're going down the sort of socialist routes and getting full control of the economy is with the anticipation of a communist state at the end. But the issue is that you never actually get to that communist state at the very end. I think the criticism that is
Sure.
often levied against Marx is that rather than it being inevitable going from capitalism to socialism to communism, once you get socialism like full control over an economy, the people who are in charge will never let it go. And I think
Yeah.
that's why he gets criticized the way he does for it.
Yeah, I understand that, but I mean, I just sort of disagree with it, I guess, in terms of. But okay, once again, I haven't read actually from his mouth um, what he believes, but I
No,
just
same.
agree with the. I just agree with a lot of what I understand about it, and yeah, possibly it's human nature to for those in power to like want to keep the power. I mean, I hope not. I would hope that we could get to some sort of fair and equal society eventually. But I mean, yeah, I guess you can blame him to an extent, but also you could also blame Stalin for killing 100 million or whatever the number is, or is that?
Oh
I don't really
yeah,
care.
like, I don't think you should ever like say that they're not responsible. It's like, oh, it's all Marx's fault. Like,
No,
yeah,
I'm.
mate,
Yeah,
you're the one who
yeah,
did implement the genocide and the yeah, and but I think it's more like the reason why those figures were able to reach the top was because they were cashing in on those ideas, so to speak.
yeah,
I
and it's
think that's the
popular
reason
to
why he gets
the
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 blame for it.
majority of the people, I suppose. Well, not anymore, but back then it was. So you can and this is what the fucking Nazis did, didn't it? They hid behind socialism. They were never socialist. Nothing in their policy was socialist, but they used it to garner the support of the working class because that's the majority of the people.
Yeah, well, the communists. I think I read somewhere recently that the Communist Party, I think in the run up to one of the German elections, actually implored their members to vote for the Nazis. I think the idea
And then,
was
but
that
communists were one of the first people
um,
that the Nazis came after as well. As soon as they were in power,
yeah, yeah,
they started arresting communists.
yeah. No, it wasn't a wise move on their part. But I
Yeah.
think their reasoning was that they will enlarge the state, and then we can take a power grab, if you like, and go for it. But obviously, they didn't realise that in the event of them enlarging the state, they would end up being pursued. No, it
So
is really interesting, and I wish I did learn more about this era of
yeah, me
history. To be
too.
fair,
I'm surprised we didn't learn literally anything about it. I can't remember a single in my whole school career learning anything about like communism or Russia or the other country that I'm going to soon. So I don't want to talk about negatively. Um, um, but yeah, I wanted to get back to we've been talking very broadly about fucking economic systems. Um, in relation to They
yeah.
Live, so you enjoyed the film, and you said on that document that you sent me before about how you can enjoy a film you don't agree with ideologically. Do you reject
Mm.
wholeheartedly the um what is presented and critiqued in the film They Live? Because I'm watching it and I'm like, damn, it was like this long ago, and it's worse now, and it's exactly the same. Do you know what I mean? So, but you're sitting
So I
there and be
think
like, yeah,
we're
good film, but I mean, there's nothing wrong.
so I look at that film and he puts the glasses on and he looks at the adverts and he sees the billboards and it says stuff like obey, stay
Mm-hmm.
asleep. So, and the not impression, like the message being that in like our economy, which I also wouldn't necessarily describe as capitalism per se. I think it's more of a mixed economy in the sense that you have some industries that are more freed up and more some industries that are under control. And I think it is much more of a mixed economy than like a pure capitalist or a socialist one. But either way, like this is clearly targeting like the capitalist elements of it. And
Also, reminder that this
yeah,
was
I think
made in the peak
yeah,
of Reagan's presidency. This
yeah,
is
but I think even then it still wasn't like fully capitalist. Like you still had a lot of government departments running various things. Like it was certainly more than it had been previously.
sure, but it's
But the point being that I
yeah.
still describe it as a mixed economy.
So you're like me about communism not being real. You're like capitalism's never been done to the degree that it could.
Yeah, I think there's a sense in which that applies to both systems. Like I think when you look at history, and again, like I think like you, I don't know like enough for me to actually be saying this categorically. But as far as I'm aware, there's never been a case of either of those systems like through and through tried. And I mean, in the case of communism, like the way Marx depicted it to be, it doesn't sound like that's ever been the case. But I think with capitalism, it doesn't sound like there's ever been like a fully capitalist system. Um, but that's not really relevant to this discussion, given that clearly the thing that the film is targeting and critiquing is the capitalist elements. But I've heard this idea before
Yeah,
about
it's
how a
neoliberalism
marketing
and
campaign,
Reaganism.
yeah,
Would you agree? Yeah.
yeah, I'd agree with that. Yeah, like as in it's during the 80s and it's talking about that kind of era, yeah.
Yeah,
And I
there's a lot
guess
of shit
yeah,
about
you did have
unions.
yeah, there was some stuff about that. Although I think that was more of a throwaway comment. I think in the film, I didn't think that was integral
Um,
to it.
so it's when he's trying to get the job and he's like, "This is a union job," and then he looks over at a bunch of immigrant workers, and then it's um implied that he's doing it like under the table sort of thing, like he's now being an illegal
Yeah,
laborer.
yeah, yeah. But then I didn't really get the impression that it was so much critiquing unions either. It was more like, oh, maybe it was. Actually, I don't know.
I think it was critiquing
Like, would
union
you say there
busting.
was
I don't think it was critiquing unions because Reagan was a big union buster, and this was all about Reaganism.
with the what do you call it, the union job thing? Like, do you think
Hmm.
that's a pro or an
I think
anti-union
I don't
stand?
know.
Because if anything, I thought it'd be an anti one.
I think it's just sort of establishing the setting more so than anything, where it's like it's in the process of a de-unionized labor force and how these bosses who are technically meant to be doing a union job are willing to still break the rules on that front and to pay someone less presumably or benefit themselves in some way. I think it's I
Because
don't
my
think
thinking
it's
with that scene,
critiquing it. I think it's just used to establish the world.
because I think my thinking with that scene was more like if it was going to be anything, it'd be more of a critique of the union system, where like some guy, some outsider, can still get a job, even though he's not part of a union. Like if that was going to be like an interpretation I was going to give, but I thought more than anything is more like a passing remark.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, now that you mention it, I am wondering why they actually included it and actually emphasized that point about it being a union job and not
Hmm.
otherwise. But you asked me before about my thoughts on the film's message. So I think what I didn't like about it was this idea that like marketing campaigns, like adverts, those kind of things, they're all means of controlling people. Whereas when I see an advert, I don't suddenly have this sense that I'm being controlled. It's more like I see an advert, they're advertising a product or a service to me. It could be a value, might not be a value. If it's of value, I'll explore it further. If not, won't bother. And so I think of it as much more of a device of communication rather than a device of control. And I think that's something that I thought was a bit like made my eyes roll a little bit.
Yeah, I mean it's definitely fucking cheesy, and like goofy.
But
I
but,
don't know.
like
I
it's cheesy, but I think this is actually something that I've heard people advocate, saying that like I think I've heard some people like even go so far as saying that we're being oppressed by uh adverts. And I think there was one
I think
thing
it's what the
that I
adverts
remember a lot of people.
represent and the function that they have in society to keep us spending. Um, I don't know how I'm going to fit this in here. There's a YouTuber I watch called Gary's Economics, who was a
I've heard of this guy.
right, yeah, he was a trader and he won big betting against the economy during the financial crisis and every year since, and that it hasn't recovered. Um, and he talks about the transfer of wealth during COVID a lot and how what our government did was tried to freeze the economy to a certain extent, and furlough us all, and we all got paid, and so there was a great amount from the government given straight to us, but unfortunately it transferred directly to the top because um, we were still having to spend, and so you'd still have to pay your rent. So the person who owns your house or your mortgage, so the person who owns your house is still getting the money. You're still going to the shop, you're still buying that, but they don't have to spend as much. The owning class, because their expenditure is more on luxury goods and stuff. So they're just getting all the money from the bottom that was given straight to the bottom to help them during COVID, but it's all transferred up because their expenditure hasn't stopped. Do you know what I mean? Am I making sense?
Um, like I get your point about how a lot of money has gone to various
So the
companies, but I think,
yeah.
but I think a big reason for that was because we, as people, still need to consume, regardless of whether the
Mm-hmm.
government told us that the economy was going to be reined in or not, and because there were very few things that were allowed to be left open. Like I think your typical small businesses were not allowed to be left open because the regulations are in place. Whereas
Mm-hmm.
if you say bought something from Amazon, then there wasn't an issue because you could still have a delivery driver driving to your door and dropping various things off.
Yeah,
And Amazon's just one of them, but there are a whole bunch of others. Like, streaming services, I'm sure they went up because people were still able to
certainly.
buy those sorts of services.
Mm-hmm. So, but do you see how that just sends the money provided to solve the problem straight into the hands of the owners of all this stuff because it's just mass.
The only, but I think the only reason why they got the money was because they were still providing something of value. For example, I remember I probably bought quite a few things from Amazon during that time. And the reason why
But
is because Amazon was the only provider that would actually be able to deliver me books, deliver me like different things that I needed to buy, whereas other
but the
places
function
simply
but the
weren't
function
allowed
was
to
to
be
help.
kept open.
Sure, but the function was meant to be to help the those who are working, so to protect them from losing their job, so they get to keep their job, but they get the money. But again, it doesn't actually help them. It only helps the people on top because the money that you're getting at the bottom goes directly to the top because you again it's forget like Amazon. It's more so like rent and mortgage that would be a big one. Do you know what I mean? I'm so bad at explaining this. I'm
Yeah,
really.
but isn't
But
there?
anyway, what I'm getting at
No,
is
no, 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 no. But I don't think you're bad at explaining it. I just think that, like, I put it this way: I don't see what's so like terrible about it in the sense that they're getting the
well,
money,
the
but they still
wealthy
need that
increase
money
their
to spend
wealth
on things
by
like food.
on average the wealth of the billionaires went up by I don't want to say on average. The wealth of billionaires increased by 107 billion, I think, and on average it was like a couple hundred mil per millionaire or billionaire. The average, their wealth increased by millions, increased directly because of that. So anyway, the
Hmm.
point that ties to with the film and the advertising is the idea that consumerism is used to uh, while the wealthy are consumerist too, it benefits them more because they are the owning class and they own all the stuff that we're consuming. So if it's completely always pushed to you to like buy this, you need this. And obviously we're not talking about food here because we all need food, but there's luxury food and there's I don't know, we buy shit all the time. I got fucking 200 DVDs over there. Um, and it is just to
Okay,
raise
but
the
I'm
wealth of
glad
the
you mentioned
already
that because
wealthiest.
but it's not just for that reason, right? Why do you buy DVDs? Or no, not DVDs. I hope you buy Blu-ray now because they're
Yeah,
safe
yeah,
now.
yeah. I buy
Why do you
DVDs if
buy
I'm in a charity
Blu-ray
shop and
discs?
there's like a 50p DVD. I buy them because I like movies and I like to consume movies. And on Amazon, you can't trust that you're going to own that forever. And it looks better than, but it is. I do have to process that it is a waste of money and I don't need any of this.
Yeah, but you do though. Like you clearly love film. You're probably
Mm-hmm.
one of the people who loves film the most out of everyone I know. It's clearly a big value in your life,
Mm-hmm.
and that's the reason why you buy films. Like for example, today. So I thought I'd do a little bit of a show and tell. Like I basically enriched Amazon by 20 something quid this week, and the reason why I did it wasn't because like Amazon manipulated me to control me. Reason why is because I fucking love movies and TV shows, and they're willing to provide various things for me. Got the new Watchmen series. I say new Watchmen series is quite a while now.
It's like 5 years old.
Contact, Inter, yeah, like Interstellar. Like I got all those, and like the reason being because, like you, I really like films, TV shows. Well, I guess I know you're not a huge fan of TV shows, but the point being that there was a sale on. Uh, the price was worth, what I was getting in return, and like that's why I got it. And I think the impression I get with the way people talk about like the relationship between the consumer and the producer in capitalism, and the reason why I think it annoys me quite a lot is because it's almost like there's a zero sum game mentality. Whereas I think when you go to a transaction, and like granted, there'll be some transactions that people make that, looking back at it, they think, why did I do that? That was a waste of money. But I think like 99 times, like 99.9999%, I think the transactions people make are ones that do actually benefit both parties. In the sense that I bought a TV stand when I arrived here because I needed something to mount my TV on. I needed a beanbag because I needed something to sit down on. Like, I don't think, like, consuming something isn't something that is necessarily detrimental to you. Now, obviously, if you're a drug addict and you're like consuming a lot of money on heroin, yeah, like stop. But I think if you're talking about things that actually do benefit your life, it's not only that I just don't see an issue, but I think it is actually something that is good, like for you, the buyer. And I think that's what I was a little bit miffed by with this film. Like, do you get what I mean? Like when you see adverts
I
for like a car, maybe somebody actually really wants a car and actually drives a
exactly
lot of
though.
value
That
from it.
that is the thing. We're talking here about very stuff with purpose that we sort of need. So you're talking about your TV stand, sure, and it's not a bad thing to buy certain things, but I'm not like a very materialistic person, so I'm not really one to talk about. But you do get people. I even know people who will buy, items of status like watches and jewelry and shit, and just stuff like that. I mean, it's pushed to you ideologically, in media of like this means you have this status, and so you want this watch, you want this car, and it's literally everywhere. I would be shocked if you deny that. Um, there's this fella called Andrew
No, I
Taint
think it is everywhere, but
who's very
yeah,
influential
no,
on
there
young
are people like
men.
that do exist.
Yeah, it's in movies a
But do
lot.
you think
Like
that it's? But I guess the question I have is that like fundamentally an issue, or rather, no, not fundamentally. Is that only an issue with, say, the people producing these things and marketing them, or is it also an issue with the people who think that their value is derived from the things they have? Because I think,
but
like you, I wouldn't consider myself to be very materialistic. Like, I have material things, but I'm not somebody who looks out for various, like, clothes brands or, I don't
yeah,
know, like brands in general.
people exist as a product of their environment. And so you don't just wake up and be like, oh, I'm a shoe guy. I want to buy all the best shoes. You're conditioned to see value in shoes. You see people who you think are cool and do something good, and you're like, oh, they wear these shoes. I don't know, I'm going with shoes as an example, just because I do own a couple of
The,
what I
the,
would consider expensive shoes,
that makes
but not.
sense.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, shoes is a big one. And Nike.
I mean, I think a big reason, like footballers, they'll show the
Exactly.
football boots they wear.
How
I
many
do.
times did,
But
as a kid, you'd
like,
you'd get someone who buys the new fucking Chelsea kit every time there's a new Chelsea kit? It's pushed to
yeah, there'll be
us
a lot.
subconsciously or otherwise on the behalf of the. But it can't be subconscious. They know that they do it. They redesign it every fucking year so that you buy a new version,
Yeah,
so
yeah,
that they
no.
can get more money and their shareholders can become happy. We are
But do you
encouraged to
think that there's
consume
a
stuff
chance
that we
that
don't need all the fucking time.
Fight Club?
Is that a
Um,
quote from
do
Fight Club?
you think that the
Yeah, I
people
guess so, innit?
who buy? I think. Well, I think as soon as I
He's
said
like,
it,
shit we
I think I
don't need
realized
by
that it's
people we don't
probably
fucking like. Yeah.
like it's
Yeah,
Yeah,
Brad
yeah,
Pitt
people
says
don't
that at
like,
some
yeah.
point. Yeah.
But I think, yeah. But I think with the football shirts, yeah. So I personally, yeah, maybe a more relevant example to me. So I am unfortunately a Wales fan, a Welsh rugby fan, and if you follow Welsh rugby, you'll realise that we are like the bottom of the barrel at the moment, like pretty much the worst run we've ever had in a year. And I've supported them for like quite a few years now, and I've got probably two shirts from my time supporting them. And I'd say that I'm probably bombarded with just as many adverts as my other mates were, like for the new Wales kit, especially when you're watching the new Wales game. And yet I choose not to buy like that many kits. And many friends that I know also choose not to buy as many kits. There will be some people who will religiously buy a new kit every single year, but I think a big part of it comes down to how much you actually value supporting your team, uh, like supporting, like actually wanting to get the new kits, the hands on. And put it this way, I don't think it's like a case of just like manipulation. Now, maybe if you're a kid and you want the new kit every single year and you don't actually have a concept of money, yeah, fair enough. But I think when you're actually dealing with adults who, they have their finances and like they know if they buy this particular thing, they're not going to have as much money for other things. I don't think it's like a pure manipulation game, if you like. And that's where my gripe is with these sorts of adverts. Because I think fundamentally what a marketing campaign is a communication of value. And yeah, like that's my general take on it. Does that make sense?
Again, it comes back to, I guess you're just an individualist. Like, I just see it
Yeah,
as a
I guess
broader.
because I like
Sorry, you go.
well, yeah, I didn't realize how much of a delay there was between us, but
Sorry. Yeah, there is a bit.
yeah, I think I I admit that there you definitely have influence from your environment, and I think I've heard that even some like behavioral traits like can come from your genes, and there's no doubt that the values you get in your life are contextual. Like if I was in the Middle Ages, it's impossible for me to value a Blu-ray disc given they don't even exist.
Hmm.
And likewise, it's possible for me to value some object that will only exist in 400 years' time. So I get that things we value are contextual, but I think ultimately we do have like the ability to actually really properly reflect and actually think on things that we actually subscribe to and actually ask ourselves, well, do I really value this? Like, do I really need that? If the you can
But some
often
people
boil it
do
down to
live
an
in
answer
the
of yes or
point,
no.
the place of wealth where you can you have your needs met and you can still spend a bunch on getting other people richer. Like, not everyone's on the edge of poverty, and like people can afford to get the new fucking Wales kit every year. Do you know what I mean? It's not so much about um always choosing between consumerism and survival. Like, there is a level which I guess the majority of people are at, where they have an amount of disposable income, not exposable. What the fuck? They do have an amount of disposable income, and that is condition. They are conditioned from birth to spend that on stuff that is materialist, and even the non-disposable income is also being used to increase the wealth of the small handful of people who already own everything.
Decent movie, decent movie. I should say, even though I didn't like the cynical take on marketing and adverts, still enjoyed it. You can enjoy something even if the political message is one you don't agree with.
And
It is possible.
it's good that two people on different sides of the argument can have a nice discussion about it. Should we wrap up? Is there any other stuff that you watched that you want to talk about or anything?
Anything else that I watched? Yeah, so I did mention this before, and I know that you're a fan of Zack Snyder,
Mm-hmm.
and I think you said you like to Watchmen. I just wanted to ask as a quick question: have you seen? this TV series of Watchmen?
No, I haven't watched. No, I.
So I've seen 3 episodes, and it's definitely different. Like they definitely take their own twist, their own direction from the comics. Um, but it's good. Like I think they do it in a really good way, and I would recommend you watch it.
Thanks for watching this episode where we argue about economic systems and talk for about 5 minutes about the John Carpenter classic They Live. Oh, 5-star rating. Let's do it. We got to do it. I'm going 4.5 star. I find this fucking funny and I loved it.
Oh, you're doing it out of 5 star now.
Oh, we can do it. I'll do 9 out of 10 just for consistency.
9 out of 10. I'm going to give this a 6 because it was surprisingly really pleasant to look at, and it was just fun. And yeah, I wouldn't say I felt bored during it. It's just a fun ride, nothing too deep, and yeah, 6 out of 10.
Good time. All right.
All right,
See
Lahane
you
and
later. No,
Memento
no. That's
next
before.
week. Oh,
So
oh,
next week
sorry.
is definitely following, and there's some contention about what we're going to do with following. Unless there's not. I don't know. We might do a raise
Oh
ahead, or
shit!
we
Yeah,
might do
no,
Watcher or
yeah.
some other random one. We'll see.
I suggest to raise ahead because I've already spent some like 20 odd quid on the Criterion Collection
You
version,
already
and I
bought
don't want
it.
that to go to waste. Yeah, yeah. But I hope
Alright,
it gets delivered in time
I
because
guess we're doing it
HMV,
then.
I think, yeah.
Well, that's next
All
week.
right.
All right.
Yeah.
Peace
True.
out. Bye.
See ya.